In today's episode, Nathan asks, do you see a place for human contribution still in predictive analytics, even with AI taking over? This is a great question and a very interesting one because the short answer is yes. The long answer is predictive analytics is part of the world of analytics, and analytics is really, really good at answering the question of what happened. What is this? What happened? What's going to happen? By implication, analytics is not real good at explaining why, especially when you start looking at complex variables and multivariables, things that you would have to build enormous amounts of predictive landscape data in just to be able to explain things. And so there is absolutely a role for human beings and human contributions in predictive analytics, and there will be for quite some time until you get AI that can look across large numbers of variables. So let's take a look at what this might look like. I'm going to use, let's do a prediction here. Let's bring one up on Dunkin Donuts, which is the chain here that is prominent in New England, within the Boston, Massachusetts DMA. So this is DMA 506, which is Boston, Manchester, basically the Boston metro area only. So it's not predicting anything outside of that. And what we're looking at here is what is the likelihood of people searching for Dunkin Donuts near me, so they're using a localized query, over the next 52 weeks. And I ran this, this is being run in October of 2018, so you can look forward here. And what we see are peaks happening. Anything above that dark gray bar is in the upper 25 percentile range. We see, okay, it looks like it's going to be real popular here around end of October, actually mid-November. We see another spike there just before the holidays. It gets super quiet until you get to about May, and once you get into the middle of May, searches for Dunkin Donuts near me, it reaches its next peak, its next big volume. Now, what does this tell us? Well, it tells us, if I happen to work for Dunkin Donuts, which I don't currently, it tells us when Dunkin should be doing certain campaigns to maximize the interest in their brand, specifically for people within the Boston metro area looking for their brand near them. But it doesn't tell us why. We don't know why. This chart won't explain it. And even if I were to select other things here, like I'm going to select coffee shop, the generic term, we see a similar curve, but not an identical term. Let's look at a competing term, Starbucks near me. Starbucks looks a lot more like coffee shop than Dunkin Donuts does, interestingly enough. And so, what's going on here? Well, we don't know. That's the thing, is we don't know just from this prediction, just from this forecast, why these things look the way they do. We would need qualitative research. We would need to be running focus groups and surveys in market at peaks and valleys to explain what's going on in people's heads. Analytics isn't going to tell us this. Predictive analytics isn't going to tell us this. We could attempt to use some things like social media text mining, but even that's going to give us a very incomplete picture. We need actual market research in order to explain these peaks and valleys within the Dunkin Donuts brand as to why people within the Boston area search for it at specific times of year that don't look like Starbucks and don't look like the generic term coffee shop. This is where human contributions matter. Human contributions would be able to bring in all that why. Why are things happening? And is the reason why a valid reason? If the market research is good or less than good. Real simple example, if we think about this Dunkin Donuts near me query, there are times a year, like the middle of winter, people aren't thinking about either coffee or iced coffee or tea, even though oddly enough in New England people drink iced coffee year round, but people don't do it as much. Well, obviously there's a climatological difference here that you're not going to get out of these analytics, but you know as a human being that that is very much a thing. Likewise, what are the other considerations that are happening in here? Well, Dunkin just renamed itself, so now they also call themselves Dunkin. So if we switch over to Dunkin near me, does the search volume change? Well, not really. It doesn't change all that much. So that's an interesting little fact in and of itself, is why is the longer and the shorter brand name not different in any way? Is the brand, what is it people are getting out of the brand name itself that is so powerful that the prediction doesn't really change when you use one brand name or the other? So for the human contributions in predictive analytics are all about why. Why are these things happening? Why do people make the buying decisions they do? Why is climate not as much of a change? Why are there these spikes in cold months? Now, some of these spikes, for example, the ones in December, we know as humans that there are things like holidays, and when people around these holidays, people go and get gift cards, and because they can't think of what else to get people, so they buy their relatives Dunkin Donuts gift cards. Well, of course, then you're going to see that spike to look for a store near you so that you can go and buy the actual gift card for somebody. But you would not see this in the data. This is not something that the data or the prediction of the forecast is going to tell you. You have to know that, being a human being. So not only are there human contributions in predictive analytics, but there is a premium, I would argue, on human experience, on life experience. And so folks who have a little more gray in their hair, like I do, who are concerned about being left behind, no, don't worry as much about that. Double down on what you have that a 20-something data scientist fresh out of graduate school isn't going to have, which is, life. You have more decades under your belt, and therefore you have more insights as to why people do the things they do. Now, obviously, you have to counterbalance that with understanding that you have biases in that life experience that you also have to account for as well. Again, this is something else to Nathan's question, where human contributions will impact predictive analytics. If the data set you're training your predictions on has any kind of bias or flaw or leaning or corruption of some kind, you have to be able to look at the data set, or look at the macro situation around that data set and say, yep, we can't use this data. We can't make a forecast or a driver analysis on this data because there's a bias in it, and no amount of technological modeling is going to fix that. An example I gave on a webinar yesterday is African American healthcare data is highly flawed. Why? Because the macro environment, discrimination against African Americans, is such that all of the healthcare data about that population is corrupted. If you are trying to balance for optimum outcomes, you have to use a different population because the discrimination against African Americans, which is centuries long, means no good data exists that is unbiased. And until you get rid of or fully mitigate that human bias, you're going to have a real hard time getting high quality data in order to do predictive analytics. So, human contributions in predictive analytics, knowing why, the general life experience, and being able to identify and account for and either remove or stop a project due to bias, or where we will have contributions for a long time to come. As always, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.